Welcome to the live example lecture of this section. Now we build a web scraper from scratch, step by step, which is able to scrape the top 10 Google search results for any given search term. So let's start right away. Open up your browser, go to google.com and enter the search term Apple. Now we see here the search results for Apple. One very important thing to mention here is that this is the static version of the Google page. To get this static version, you have to disable JavaScript in your browser. In Chrome, you can see that JavaScript is disabled, indicated by this little icon on the top right here. We will discuss the exact difference between a static web page and a dynamic web page in a later lecture. To verify that this is actually a static web page, we can just copy some text here from the result we want to scrape and look up the HTML source code of the page returned from the server, and then search for the previously copied term, and as we can see here, this is included in the HTML of the page, exactly what we defined earlier as a static web page. So we can go back and start right away with the first step from our concept, finding the exact URL which contains the data we want to scrape. In this example, this would be the URL we are looking for. We just verified this is a static page and the results we want to scrape are actually contained in the HTML returned from the server. So now we can just grab the URL and use it for our web scraper. Before we do this, I'd like to get rid of some unnecessary query string parameters, as we can see here. The only one really necessary in this example is the parameter with the value Apple. So we just use this one, delete all the rest, and verify we still get the same result. All the others were just tracking information or some unrelated, not necessary query string parameters. So this is the actual URL we need. In our example, we will use google.com, but because I'm from Germany, I'm automatically redirected to the German Google page. So now we are ready for the second step. Examine the HTML of the page and find the right CSS selector. Fire up the developer tools, then go to the Elements tab, use the inspect icon and select the first search result. So now we see the HTML of the first search result. Below there's the second, and we can make an educated guess that these diffs, all here with the class G, are the actual search results. In this example, we like to scrape the title and the URL of each search result. So let's look into the structure of one single result. There's an H3 heading containing an A tag with the URL and the title. So exactly what we searched for. So the final selector we would like to use in our web scraper is this one. One very important point to note here is that the URL contained in the href of the A tag is not exactly what we are looking for. We would just like to have this part, the HTTP, and maybe I can edit this to show it a little bit more clearly. This one. We would just like to get this one. It's exactly what we can see up here. So now we are ready for the third step, downloading the page and using the previously found CSS selector. To save some time, I already created an empty project with just the main class and the JSoup dependency. So now we can start developing our web scraper. I just copy the values from the clipboard, and now let's define our query. We say this should be something like Apple. Then we say we want to download our document. Take this page, jsoup.connect. Then I enter the URL and say get. This is the URL we want to have. Copy and paste. Then we have the unhandled exception. Just add it to the method signature. So then we say we want to replace this one to be the query string, but we do have to encode this with the URL encoder. Encode the query, and we do have to provide a chart set. We say it should be UTF-8. So that should be everything we need, and then just print the page's outer HTML to the console. Let's run this one and see if it works. Did not work. As we can see, we get an HTTP error 403, which means forbidden. In this case, Google blocks our web scraper because of the user agent string we send along. This is something like Java JSoup or so, and we can resolve this issue if we use a real user agent string. So I just go over to my browser and search for useragentstring.com. That's it. And this site just displays the user agent string with which it was requested. So in this case I use Chrome, it displays the Chrome browser. We can use this one and just declare something here, say user agent, and paste this value. And then down here, before we do the get, we can say user agent and use this string. Now if we run this again, it should work. And there it is. That's the HTML. So one of the first things, if you get a 403 or get blocked in some other way, to try is to just use a real browser user agent string. So now we do have the HTML, and we can go on using our CSS selector. We say for element search result to page.select. Now the selector we found earlier, this one, and then say we want the title. This should be equal to search result dot text, because this is just the text from the A tag. And then the URL, this should be something like attribute href, and then we just print it out to the console with title and URL. Let's see if this works. Just run it again. Yes, there it is. What we got here is pretty nice, but not quite what I expected when recording this video. So as we see down here, these are the pretty URLs, and we should get the not so pretty URLs we saw when we expected the elements in the browser. We should get something like /URL ? And so on, but we do get the pretty URL. So I wondered what would cause this difference and analyzed the HTML we just printed to the console and compared it with the HTML from the browser, and there is really a difference. In this case we are lucky because Google saved us some work. We don't have to extract the pretty URL from the, I just call it dirty URL we saw in the browser before. But the more interesting question here is what caused this difference. This is really important to understand because if you write your own web scrapers, you may encounter something similar. Most of the pages, especially the static pages, will be the same if you look at them in the browser and if you do the actual scraping with JSOUP. But in this example, Google delivered two slightly different HTML pages for the same request. The reason for this is that the browser adds some HTTP headers and cookies we do not add here. These cause Google to return the different HTML. So if you have to deal with issues like this, it's sometimes just one header missing. So look at the exact request your browser sends. You can do this in the developer tools under the network tab and just add one header and then another until you get the same result in both the browser and your request done with JSOUP. It's time to complete our last step, exporting the results. We just write the results out to a file. I used the print writer for this. Print writer and say results.txt. Then we replace the print line here with something like out.write. And then we need to add a new line at the end of this. After we are finished, we make sure to close it. The exception handling here is kept easy and it just throws every exception which results in the ending of the program. It's just for demo purposes here to keep it simple and focused on the real task. Let's run it and see if our file is written. And as we can see here is the results.txt. We can open it and there are our results. We cover exporting the results as comma-separated value and JSON in another section of this course. So I hope you enjoyed this live example, and I intentionally picked this one even though it's not the easiest one, just to prepare you for developing your own web scraper and the obstacles that can get in your way. See you in the next lesson.